I am Kathy, a 55-year-old woman. A few years ago, my husband passed away due to a sudden illness, and now I live alone. I have 2 children, but both are married and do not live with me. My son has his own family but lives overseas, so I rarely see him, and I don't get to see my daughter much since she got married. I do call my children occasionally, but I've been somewhat worried about my daughter. She always sounds lifeless, and I wondered if she was being mistreated at her in-laws' place. Since getting married, my daughter has been living with her husband's parents, that is, at her in-laws' house. I've never been mistreated by my in-laws myself, but I have friends who have, so I am concerned. Hello, Sarah, are you okay? I sent a package to you recently. Did you receive it? Thank you. Sorry for contacting you late. I've been quite busy. Well, as long as you got it. But Sarah, you sound like you're not doing well. Are you okay over there? Yes, I'm fine. Sorry for making you worry, Mom. Sarah's voice was somewhat faint, almost ghost-like. Come to think of it, I haven't seen her in a while, so I can't confirm her well-being. I became anxious, wondering if she's eating properly or if she's getting enough sleep. As a parent, no matter how old you are, you worry about your children. Even if they are married and have their own family, I think that doesn't change. My late mother worried about me until the very end, so I thought it was normal for me to be concerned. I worry about Sarah to the extent that it's not overprotective or intrusive, but I worry she'll be annoyed. Well, Sarah isn't the type to say such things, so I reached out to her only once in a while. One day, I was going about my regular chores and work just as usual. It was already 8 p.m., and I was thinking about having a cup of tea before heating up the bathtub. That's when the doorbell rang. I wondered who it could be at this hour, and when I opened the door, it was Sarah. She looked more worn out than the last time I saw her. Her hair was a mess, and her cheeks were gone, and her wrist visible from her sweater had become very thin, like withered branches. I panicked, wondering why Sarah had ended up like this. Sarah, what happened? Why are you here at this time? And what's with your look? Actually, I haven't been able to buy a single new piece of clothing. What? Really? All the money I saved up from the time I was single, and even my full earning from my current part-time job, gets taken away. So I can't buy clothes for myself, and even when I ask my husband, he won't buy them for me. I see. That's why she's wearing such a tattered sweater and coat. They're covered in lint with holes everywhere. Normally, a husband would feel bad seeing his wife dressed like this, but apparently her husband doesn't care. And what does she mean by all of her part-time pay is confiscated? After Sarah got married, she quit her full-time job and started teaching part-time at a tutoring school near her in-laws' place. Seizing her paycheck, that's crossing the line. Also, they told me to keep the budget for groceries under $35. What? That's ridiculous. If I were to go over $35, they threatened to hurt me. I overspent by $5 today and got yelled at by my husband and mother-in-law. That's terrible. Mom, I have a favor to ask. I want to stay somewhere else tonight. Can you lend me $50 for a motel? I'm sure my husband will calm down by tomorrow, and I just want to stay somewhere else tonight. Honey, you don't need to stay at a motel. What a waste of money. And your face is burning red. You probably got a fever. Yeah, I caught a cold. Why don't you stay here for a while? I can take care of you. Really? Thank you. Sarah's face brightened up. I prepared some warm milk for Sarah and let her use my spare room. I had some pajamas that fit her, so I handed them to her and told her to change. She seemed really worn out from cold and fell asleep almost immediately after taking some medicine. Well, it's a relief that it's nothing too serious, but why did it have to come down to this? Kathy said she would get in trouble if she didn't keep their monthly grocery expense under $35, but that's impossible. They're not farmers. They can't grow and get their own vegetables and fruits to keep their budget that low. It made me wonder if they had some sense of basic living expenses. With inflation, prices of goods have been rising, and there's no way $35 is enough for Sarah, her husband, and her in-laws. I trembled with rage thinking about their unreasonable demands and the fact that they're confiscating all of Sarah's part-time pay. The next morning, Sarah got up looking sluggish, but her fever seemed to have gone down a bit. I made her see a doctor just in case, but it turned out to be a common cold. I was relieved it wasn't anything serious. Well, at least it's just a cold, not some troublesome disease. Yeah, there's been a flu going around recently too. But why did they start confiscating your part-time pay? Actually, my mother-in-law keeps insisting that she needs money. Huh? At first, she said she didn't have enough funds for retirement, giving several reasons, but something feels off. Packages of huge boxes are constantly being delivered to our house, and she doesn't show me what's inside. What? I'm starting to suspect that she's buying something suspicious. She told me it's for her retirement, but I think she's lying. That's concerning. I too started to think that Sarah's mother-in-law, Sabrina, must be buying something sketchy. Sarah hasn't seen what's inside these frequently delivered packages, but she says they're definitely suspicious. They arrive in abundance from overseas, so I guess her part-time earnings are being spent on that. Taking Kathy's part-time wages to buy whatever she wants is truly wicked. What in the world is her in-laws buying in such quantities anyway? I started to feel scared. Then one day, I decided to go out for some tea with my friend. Sarah recovered from her cold, so she said she was just going to relax at home and read a book. After having tea with my friend, I decided to report my daughter's situation to the police. Then, about 2 hours later, Sarah's in-laws showed up. Sarah's husband was away on a business trip abroad, but the expressions on his parents' face were demonic. Sarah's mother-in-law, Sabrina, turned beet red, while her father-in-law, Robert, glared. "You're the one who reported us to the police, aren't you?" "Yes, that's correct." "I'm sure Sarah must have secretly looked into the packages and told you about it, right, honey?"
"That's right. It must be because of this chick that the cops are onto us."
"No, my daughter said she didn't look inside." "I can't believe that. I'm sure she's trying to set us up. What a wicked daughter-in-law, being nasty and disrespecting her in-laws."
"That's right. A daughter-in-law should value her in-laws, and yet this woman just ran out of the house and even ignored our calls. There's no point hiding here."
"But I had no idea what my husband would do to me if I didn't run away." "What? You're blaming our son now? It's your fault for overspending on groceries. Stop with the excuses."
"That's right. Shut up now. Just how many times do we have to tell you that we only have light meals to keep it healthy, so $35 for groceries should be enough."
Light meals?
Yes, exactly. Light meals are the best for us humans. Eating luxurious meals can lead to gout or lifestyle diseases, which is why our model is to have light and simple meals only. So $35 is indeed enough for groceries.
Well, because of all that nonsense, my daughter has become as thin as a rail. Robert always spoke as if eating light meals was a shortcut to good health, but when Sarah first came home, she was clearly malnourished. Her shiny hair was now dry, so was her face, and her skin was peeling off. What's worse, she was so skinny that she looked like a skeleton. She might have gained a little weight now, but no one can possibly gain 20 pounds in a month, no matter how hard they try. Sure, there might be some who can, but Sarah isn't a big eater, so she probably only gains about 5 pounds max. And yet, she's wasting $35 like that. She's such an incompetent daughter-in-law. Have you ever taught her how to manage household expenses? This tells a lot about the way you raised her. Oh, look who's talking.
What did you say?
Well, all that talk about light meals is just a lie, isn't it? You two have been secretly feasting on good food, haven't you? Well... A friend of mine mentioned that she saw you guys shopping for expensive ingredients at the upscale supermarket Whole Foods. That's... And apparently you were also buying quality liqueur. Were you hiding it to drink somewhere else?
Well, that's...
They were clearly taken aback, looking rather flustered. Sweat was trickling down their faces, and they were huffing and puffing as they wiped it off. So, what's your point? Reporting us to the police just because we secretly enjoy good food without our daughter-in-law? Have you lost your mind, Kathy? Haha.
Exactly. It's not a big deal, right? We also want to spoil ourselves once in a while. We've been eating simple and light meals for so long.
Oh, is that so? But I suppose all this luxury is thanks to the money you've made through your sketchy business. What?
Huh?
Don't you guys sell Japanese pharmaceutical products on eBay? About that... It seems that it's against the site's policy for individuals to sell pharmaceutical products. I don't really use online flea markets much, so I wasn't aware, but but isn't that against the pharmaceutical affairs law?
Well,
So I decided to report it. It seems you were selling stuff like Dream Diet pills. But how do you know? Oh, that friend of mine was almost sold to get your products. She's a bit chubby, and when she was walking down the street, she ran into you and got asked to try the Dream Diet pills and to buy them from your online store. Oh, that time. My friend is indeed a bit chubby, but she was offended that someone even more overweight would say something like that to her, haha. Well, Sabrina, you are indeed quite huge, so... What? What do you mean? Where am I huge? My body's glamorous. Huh, glamorous. Also, Robert, you've got a bit of a belly too. You must be eating and drinking some pretty good stuff. Using our daughter's part-time earnings to buy luxurious produce at the supermarket and profiting off your diet pills to eat even better.
this is not fat, it's all muscles.
Huh?
I got that hard, tight six-pack, right, dear?
Yes, that's right. Robert is definitely not overweight, and I still turn heads because I have a nice body too, haha. Sabrina snorted and bragged how she was still considered a good-looking lady. She was very confident in herself, wearing a tight miniskirt. Even in the middle of winter, she didn't wear stockings. I wondered if her bare legs got cold. At that moment, the daughter spoke. Well, you use that glamorous body of yours to get guys, right? Haha. Huh? The other day, I went to the doctor because I had a cold. There was an OBGYN next door, and I saw you going in with a young man. Haha. Hey, that? There's a reason for that. Do you mean in your 50s you've had a child with a young man? Or did you catch a disease? Oh my. That's not it. Shut up.
You even got that far with some random guy. Are you pregnant or sick? Which is it?
I'm sick.
What the hell? No wonder I've been feeling off. It's your fault.
I'm sorry, I was just with him for fun. It's not my fault, the guy just wouldn't leave me. Huh, you seem to be having a great time. You guys even looked like a sweet couple, holding hands and going into the hospital. And it was you who was all excited, talking about, let's go dine at a restaurant after this, and we'll go on a Ferris wheel too, haha. Shush, don't talk any more than this. I cannot forgive you for using all of my earnings and the fact that you guys were eating great outside home. Also reselling the contents of that strange package, breaking the law, terrible. Well, needless to say, having an affair is awful too, haha. Ah!
Sabrina, everything's ruined because of you.
Huh, father-in-law, you were selling stuff out too. I know you guys were being sneaky, staying up at night.
No, I was only running a business. I wasn't having an affair. I'm clearly innocent.
No, what are you talking about? You've been a criminal since the moment you violated the law. You're far from innocent. My daughter has grown tougher now and took a firm stand against them. Sabrina was sobbing uncontrollably and Robert kept yelling. It was a disaster. Even though we were in our house, they were so loud that our neighbors came out and it turned into a gawking spectacle. They yelled at me, saying they were being embarrassed, but it wasn't my fault. For now, my daughter's planning on divorcing your son. Given that she was abused, she'll probably sue him for emotional distress and seek compensation. That's right, I will seek compensation from my husband. Also, please return all my part-time earnings that you guys took away. But...
That's...
I said give it back. Don't you dare underestimate me. Did you think I was some slave who would just obey everything? I'm not afraid of you anymore. I don't care what happens. Just give it back. Yes, I'm sorry.
I was wrong. I apologize.
Our usually soft-spoken daughter raised her voice, causing them to hastily bow down an apology. It seemed as if we were bullying them, and I wished my daughter would stop yelling at them, but I guess it serves them right after all. In the end, they were penalized for their crimes, it seems. Later, Sabrina and Robert got divorced, but it turns out Sabrina had not only contracted a disease, but was also pregnant in her 50s. Even I was taken aback by this. She, of course, had to pay alimony to Robert. Since then, Sabrina planned on starting over with her lover, but got abandoned by him. Even when I heard this, she meant nothing to me, so I didn't care at all. My daughter also got divorced and receives compensation from her ex-husband. My daughter didn't have children yet, so I thought it was good that she was able to divorce before having any. Rumors spread in our neighborhood that my daughter ran away after she was mistreated by her husband. It seems that the rumor also got to his workplace. From what I've heard, it became uncomfortable to stay at his workplace, so he resigned on his own. I don't know what happened to him after that, but he's probably staying with his father, Robert. I am now living together with my daughter, but we are not financially struggling. My daughter works as an online tutor, and I have been working from home for a while now, so we make a decent living. My daughter has been putting on some weight and getting healthier. Seeing this, I am truly relieved.
My name is Sherry. I am thrilled to be opening my own coffee shop. My husband, Ken, left his job at a restaurant to join me. After all, it was our dream to run a coffee shop together. We don't have kids yet, but this shop we've created through countless trials and errors, from financing to location and interior design, is our baby. So we are eagerly awaiting for our grand opening, our baby's debut. One day, while we were buzzing around with preparations, we had a visitor to our place, right above the shop. It was Ken's mom, my mother-in-law. She's a laid-back person, accepting of our venture. I admire her calm character and kindness so much. I hope to be such a mother-in-law when I have my own daughter-in-law. It's still a few days early for our grand opening celebration, but she arrived with an enormous load of luggage. Surprised, Ken and I asked what happened. Then she said, "I've been kicked out of Joe's house." Just as she said, she'd been kicked out of the apartment she shared with my brother-in-law and had nowhere else to stay. I knew this would be a busy time for you guys, but... She looked apologetic. Her nonchalant attitude only made it harder for me. But Ken and I, we were both furious, not at her, but at my brother-in-law. Ken immediately called him. "Joe, Mom showed up alone at our place, saying she's been kicked out. What's going on?" Joe, remorseful yet firm, told us, "We just can't live together. My wife and I are also swamped, starting a new business, and we don't have time to take care of Mom, who's becoming forgetful. Could you guys take care of her for a while? Once we're settled, we'll come to get her." Though it served his interests, we couldn't trust his words. Joe had reluctantly cared for our mother-in-law just because he was the older brother. Joe's wife wasn't very caring either. They must be having a blast after kicking her out. So I thought of a way to prevent our kind mother-in-law from feeling lonely or pitiful. "Okay, if that's what you say, Joe. Mother-in-law, you can live with us." There was no other choice. Their father had already passed away, and there were only 2 brothers, so there was no one else to take care for her. I feel a bit imposed upon, but my mother-in-law is family to me too. I can't just not take care of her, especially since she's so kind and I love her dearly. If you're fine with it, then I want her to stay with us too. Ken also seems optimistic. Apparently, Ken was always a mama's boy, so it may actually be a good thing for him to have his mother close by. Well, thanks, Ken, Sherry. I'll have to think about how I can repay you. My mother-in-law seems to understand the situation, or maybe she doesn't. She just responds casually. "How about I make dinner every day?" "Oh, but you two are running a restaurant, so there's no need for me to cook, right?" I think helping your family is a given. But if she wants to repay us, Ken and I thought about having her help at the store sometimes. "Mother-in-law, if you'd like, could you help out at the shop sometimes? Chatting with customers, making desserts, spending time like that might be enjoyable." "Well, if it helps you two, I'd like to do anything." Mother-in-law happily agreed. If she considers it as one of the household chores, she'll probably get used to cooking quickly. Anticipating that, Ken and I talked about having her help with mainly cooking. With the conversation going in that direction, we decided to show her with the store downstairs. After we went down the stairs and showed her around the ground floor cafe and introduced the opening menu, my usually slow-paced mother-in-law suddenly became clear and assertive. "Ken, Sherry, this shop won't be popular as it is. It's still not too late to prepare, so start now." Ken and I were astounded at the confidence out-of-the-blue ideas our mother-in-law proposed. For example, given the current retro trend, even a newly built store should have old-fashioned interior and background music. The menu should include items that mother-in-law used to eat when she was young, to not only attract young people riding the retro wave, but also to appeal to older customers. Moreover, since the number of candy shops in our town is decreasing, we should set up a corner for candies, allowing buyers to eat inside the store and would attract families with children. All her ideas were innovative and in line with the town's needs. They were so spot on that we had to agree, and under the direction of our mother-in-law, we immediately began preparing. After our mother-in-law started living with us, our long-desired store opened a few days later, and a month has passed since then. If the store had no future, the number of customers would significantly decrease after a month, but we don't have that worry with our store. We get so many customers every day that there's a line. All this is thanks to our mother-in-law. Sherry, the sandwich for table 3 is ready. Please bring it over. Yes, coming right now. Though I'm busy, each day is fulfilling. It might have been a real blessing that my mother-in-law decided to barge into our lives at that time. But one day, an intruder would disrupt our busy yet enjoyable days. It was my brother-in-law and his wife. We live in the same town, you know. We've heard the rumors. Your business seems to be flourishing. And isn't it true that Mom is being called the beloved granny of the store? My brother-in-law, with a sarcastic look on his face, glanced around the cafe and said this. Actually, we're thinking of starting our own shop too. A boba milk tea shop, which has been all the rage since last year. For that, we would love to have Mom help us out. That's why we came to pick her up. Give Mom back. Huh? Joe, what are you saying all of a sudden? Well, it was agreed from the start that she would return once we settled down. Now it's time. Come on, give Mom back. You guys have had enough of your good fortune, haven't you? It's our turn now. As if they can just return my mother-in-law like she's some kind of lucky charm. They can say whatever they want, but the cafe that the 3 of us created is just starting to take off. The real test is still to come. We're already relying on my mother-in-law as a full-time employee. If she were to leave us now, who would fill that gap? You can just hire part-time workers. A thriving business like yours should have no trouble attracting young workers, right? They'd probably work harder than an elderly woman like Mom. So Mom, let's say goodbye to Sherry and Ken, and go home together. At Joe's words, my mother-in-law agreed surprisingly easily. Both my husband and I were thrown off. Mom, you don't have to listen to Joe. You can stay where you want. Ken, I really think it's okay to go back to Joe's place. I'm sorry for interfering, Sherry, but it was fun working with you two. Come and visit us at home sometime. Without giving the impression like she was being taken away by force, my mother-in-law went back home with Joe and his wife. There was no time to feel wronged or bitter, but with the absence of my mother-in-law, who was like oil in our machinery, both the cafe and our home felt a bit emptier. That much was certain. Days where we forgot about time due to our busyness passed, and before we knew it, about half a year had passed. The cafe is still bustling as usual today. The advice from my mother-in-law, whom we haven't heard from since that day, has undoubtedly contributed to our success. I wonder if she's doing okay. I thought about calling her out of concern, but seeing Ken, who obviously felt abandoned by his mother, acting sulky, I couldn't bring myself to make contact. Welcome! The atmosphere at home isn't great, but the store opens today as always, and we have customers coming in. And on that day, it was not a customer who opened the door of the shop, but my mother-in-law, her usual serene expression on her face. Sherry, Ken, I've missed you. Mom, what brings you here all of a sudden? Mother-in-law, we were worried about you. You never reached out. Have you been okay? In response to our barrage of questions, my mother-in-law simply smiled and repeated what she had said once before. I was kicked out of Joe's house. They asked me to help at the shop, and I did. But it seems the business has been floundering. They told me I was a nuisance, so I left, and I was hoping to work with you guys again. It seemed that yet again my mother-in-law had been driven out for a reason you wouldn't think to do to your own mother. Ken and I began to plot our revenge on Joe, but it turned out there was no need. Joe showed up on his own, looking utterly worn out. Mom, why do you keep disappearing without a word? Both me and her are struggling without you. Joe's wife, also known as Her, wasn't present today. It seems she was overseeing the shop. Joe, don't make it sound like it's my fault. You guys said you wanted to cut labor costs, so I, being your family, decided to leave first. I then understood what she meant by being kicked out. If they wanted to cut labor costs, they'd first dismiss the ones who could easily be let go. Or my mother-in-law, who was at an age where she technically didn't need to work. That was not about you, Mom, but the part-timers, the students. We never said a word about you. Moreover, I don't want to be in your shop anymore. I don't want to jump into a sinking ship. If they asked me to finance a failing shop using my savings and pension, it'd be unbearable. Don't be like that. Come back to the shop and give us advice like you did to Ken. Didn't you say that even an old woman like you could give advice on managing the shop, and that Ken and his team were very kind? We also want advice from you. It's not a big deal. No way. I helped Ken and his team because they wanted to create a coffee shop like the one I worked at when I was young. A place where the local people can relax. You're only interested in your own profits and short-term gains. That's not true. I also opened a store to sell trending desserts for the revitalization of our community. Is that really so? Young people's trends change so quickly. You're not capable of adapting to such volatile changes because you're a business novice. Besides, even if it's trendy, young people are very observant of adults, and they'll naturally migrate to a better shop. Your shop might be novel and shiny, but the staff training isn't up to the mark. And customers don't seem comfortable there either. Just because you have experience working in a finance department and are good with numbers, it doesn't mean you can run a business well. It's pathetic. It's clear that the staff are blindly led too. With a sigh, my mother-in-law continued to speak with a sorrowful expression, as if lamenting her own son. In a small-town diner like this, you can't just mindlessly sell what's trendy among young folks. You failed to cater to customers' needs. You couldn't captivate their hearts. I wonder if you really aspire to be in the service industry. It saddens me. Especially since I used to be a waitress at a coffee shop. I just couldn't, and don't want to, work at your place. You should have said so from the very beginning. You were quick to intervene with Ken, but with me, you just went along with things. I couldn't intervene, Joe. Your shop is targeting young people from the start, and there's nothing I, an old lady, can make suggestions on. I don't fully understand young people's trends because of my age. I'm just an old woman who used to be a waitress. I can't live up to high expectations. Now please, stop making a scene in Ken's shop. You should go back to your place and deal with your finances. Joe, feeling belittled by his mother, finally blew up. Enough! Let's go home! If you say you only knew about coffee shops, I'll change my business and make it a coffee shop. You can give me advice like you did for Ken and make me a lot of money. Joe tried to grab his mother's arm and pull her away. Ken and I stepped in, restraining Joe. It wasn't just Ken. I had also lost patience. Listening to the conversation, I had been holding back words I'd long wanted to say. There's no way someone who can't even care for his own mother can consider the needs of complete strangers. You can go home on your own. And don't come to see your mother again. She is a coworker to us, not a tool for you to make money. My husband threatened to call the police if he caused any more trouble. And with that, Joe finally left. After that, Joe and his wife, who treated my mother-in-law terribly, predictably failed in their business and ended up filing for bankruptcy. On top of that, they were sued by their part-time workers for harassment and unpaid wages, resulting in having to pay a hefty compensation. Joe and his wife got divorced, and he was also sued for alimony, ending up in layers of debt. Joe, who had treated his own mother so horribly, couldn't rely on his family anymore. He would have to live and work alone, slowly paying off his debt. We heard about Joe's situation through a relative, but my mother-in-law didn't seem to care, showing no intention of throwing him a lifeline. I don't have time to worry about him. I'm going to be a grandma. I'm looking forward to taking care of my grandchild. Indeed. Neither mother-in-law nor Ken and I had the time to worry about Joe. Our shop was thriving more than ever since mother-in-law came back, and we were blessed with our long-awaited child. Sherry, don't stress out just because it's your own shop. Work at your own pace. All of us, and our regular customers too, are most excited to see your child's face. Thank you, mother-in-law.